On May 25th, 1979, Dennis Wheatley was heading on his way to be able to go to a speaking engagement. He was very excited about it, knew that he had to make a couple connecting flights along the way, and found himself at O'Hare Airport, which if you've ever been there is a little bit bonkers. And as he was moving through, he realized that the time that his flight got in and the time that his next flight would leave, well, things weren't lining up. And so he knew as soon as he hit the ground that he had to run through the airport. If you've ever watched the movie Home Alone, and they're just trucking through there, maybe you've seen the people doing this, or maybe we've seen you do this. And he's trucking through the airport, trying to make his way, and as soon as he gets to the gate, they're shutting the doors. He begs and pleads with them. You don't understand. You need to let me on the plane. I bought a ticket. I need to get on this plane. Sir, regulations tell us once the door is shut, it's shut. We can't do anything more. But you don't understand. I paid for a ticket. I deserve to be on that plane. They were like Fort Knox. They were not going to move. They were not going to let him in. And so he's furious at this point. I have a speaking engagement. I got to be at it. So he trucks his way down to get to the ticketing desk. And as he's standing in line, waiting for this moment, and he's thinking what he's going to do. All right, here's where I'm at. I was on flight 191, and I'm going to tell him, you need to let me on this, and there's no way, and don't you tell me. And he's standing in line, and 20 minutes goes by, and the line hasn't moved. And as he's standing there in line, getting more and more just infuriated, he hears over the loudspeaker, patrons, we need to inform you that we're going to be locking down all gates. See, one of our planes, flight 191, had a malfunction, and, well, the plane has crashed. It had crashed upon takeoff, and, well, Dennis Wheatley looks down at his ticket and sees 191, the flight he begged to be on. He gets a cab ride and goes home and turns on the news and finds out that flight 191 that he was supposed to be on, traveling to LA, had indeed crashed, and over 270 people died that day in one of the largest accidental aviation tragedies to ever take place on U.S. soil. He didn't know what to do. He pocketed his anger and his frustration. He looked again as he got home at that ticket and walks into his office, puts it up on the little board above his desk. And every day that something would happen and an occurrence would take place that made him frustrated or made him angry, he would stop and go to the bulletin board and look up there at that ticket, that in the blink of an eye, everything changed for him. That whatever's taking place in that day, he needed a reminder to let him know that life is a gift. And that he could have, with seconds of a change in schedule, had been on the flight where there were no survivors. Just like that. See, every day, Dennis Wheatley knows what it's like to stop and make an altar and thank God for another breath. See, we started this series last week called Altars, looking at what takes place when the good, bad, little, and big moments happen. And do we ever take a time to pause in our busy schedule? I could do that. Yeah, I'd like to do that, but I'm just too busy. That's what we talked about last week. And to take time to pause, because each and every one of us need to understand that we go through new moments, these new beginnings. And we need to be able to have a reminder, this very same thing that Dennis Wheatley had as he put that on his bulletin board, this life symbol, a reminder of the past, to be able to encourage and give meaning and hope to the present and hope for the future. We will all have new beginnings. And that ticket in that moment was a new beginning for him. But you see, new beginnings, as we talked about last week, require new postures. And one of the first things that we need to understand is that our posture needs to pause and listen. Listen to the God who is taking care of us and moving in our lives. But not only to pause and do that, there's going to be a call to sacrifice. That as we start a new chapter, the chapter that was in the old, there's going to be things that get left behind. And we don't like that at all. We like what we want, how we want it, when we want it. That's why Burger King is amazing. That's why when we go through the late night window for fourth meal, we order it exactly the way that we want it. But sacrifice tells us that the old chapter, there's going to be things left behind, and we go, no, you will take it from my kung fu grip. And God goes, oh no, you need to leave that behind because I have a better story for you. See, new beginnings require new postures, and one of those is sacrifice. But not only do we begin to listen and begin to sacrifice, there's this posture of worship. That this gathering that we come together in, but not just this, not just the singing, not just learning, not just praying, not just giving, but that we gather throughout the week and do life together, which sounds very cliche. But to open up and say, my life is going really hard. What about yours? My life's hard too. Why don't we walk this out together? Because this matters. And so we stop and we build an altar thanking God that He is indeed good and that He is moving us through this. And we need that life symbol reminder. And in this week, we're going to look at what does it mean to celebrate? I mean really celebrate. Christians do an awful job of celebrating. They're like, I'm just going to talk to God and thank you, Jesus. And like Christians do not know, like Christians don't know how to party. Jesus was always invited to parties. If we can learn anything from the example of Jesus, is that we can have altars and moments of celebration. The Old Testament of the Bible packs through these moments where they would stop for a week at a time and celebrate. We just stop and go, thank you, Jesus, and then we move on. But he's talking about throwing parties. And in the story we're going to look at, it's in the Old Testament of the Bible. The Bible's broken up into Old and New Testament. It's in the book of Joshua. And if you have a Bible, I'd love for you to turn over there. Into Joshua chapter 4 is where we're going to be. If you don't have a Bible, we give them away for free. And there's two ways that you can get a free Bible today. One, stop by the Get Connected table after service. There's no catch. You don't have to sign up for anything. Grab that Bible. It's yours to keep, write in, highlight, take notes, scribble, deface, however you need to be able to dive in and get it, because that, we want you to be able to have your very own Bible. Another way that you could do that is you can go to our online digital Get Connected table, click the Need a Bible tab, and there's two ways. There's a dedicated Bible app that you can download right from your seat, or we're biased, but one of our best ways is the Forefront Church app. Has an integrated Bible, but what we love about it, and you can watch previous messages and things, but the notes section has everything we're going to be talking about today. You can fill those out, and if you're OCD like me and get distracted easily, that's perfect for you, and email those back to yourself. And when you go, man, I can't keep up with that stuff, you can search through your email, and it brings up all the notes that you've taken. All those are free. We don't get anything out of it other than knowing that you are engaging your faith more than just this hour that we're together. Because we know that you will be malnourished spiritually if this is what sustains you from week to week. Now, while I'm excited that you're here, and I'm excited that you're engaged in this, I know that just like if you run occasionally throughout the week, or you run once and eat Taco Bell all week, that it's going to be a big difference if you eat right and work out, and we know that spiritually we need to flex those muscles. And so that's why we give these tools and resources. And it's why today we're jumping in where Joshua's at, over in chapter 4, starting in verse 1. And if you don't have a Bible, it'll be here on the screens for you. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them with you, and put them down at the place where you will stay tonight." And we're going to skip down some of the extraneous details and jump down to verse 19. On the 10th day of the first month, the people, so this is the first day that they're in there, went up from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal on the western border of Jericho. And Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones he had taken out of the Jordan. He said to the Israelites who he was traveling with, they had been enslaved in Egypt. They had been freed from Egypt from Moses. That whole, if you've ever watched the documentaries or watched some of those older movies, let my people go. This is the same people that have moved through this. He said to those Israelites who he is now in charge and leading in the future when your descendants ask their parents, what do these stones mean? If you ever been around a kid or you have a kid, you know that kids ask everything, what's that, what's that, what's that? And then you tell them and they ask again and again and again and again. And so, yeah, they're going to ask, what is happening here? What do these stones mean? Tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. Don't miss that. You go, huh? The Jordan River moving fast, big. They walked on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. God's performing miracles for them. Why are those stones there? God did the miraculous. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done at the Red Sea. And it dried up until we had crossed over it. A previous generation running from slavery in Egypt. Moses leads them through. They get to the edge of the Red Sea. They go, oh snap, we're gonna die because they're coming after us. And they go, it would have been better just to stay in slavery. You let us out here to die. Thanks, Moses. Moses is like, you ungrateful people, I got you freed. I told Pharaoh. So what does he do? He calls on God, drives a staff into the ground, and because he was faithful to God, the Red Sea parts. He said, God did the same thing right here as you moved across. And so he did for these people, all the peoples on earth, that he might know the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God. This is a healthy, reverent fear, not a, ooh, I'm just going to hide, I don't want to. This is honoring God because he is so mighty and powerful. See, it's the first night in the promised land, and they're walking through this, and they've dreamed of this for years. They're ready to party like it's 1999 BC. It's a really bad joke, I know. And they've moved through this, and they're ready to celebrate. They're ready to just go, man, we have made it. We're going to set up these stones. And I wonder why, God, you could have just, like, you're miraculous, just build a bridge. Like, why part it? Why do something so grandiose? And it reminds me, my daughters, not too long ago, I had shared with them this amazing thing, this monumental thing from my childhood, one that is absolutely 100% true, and if you don't believe that it's true, you're wrong. And that is the great American pastime of wrestling. Now, I'm not talking about the guys that you see today. I'm talking about The Undertaker, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Junkyard Dog, Macho Man Randy Savage. Can I get a Slim Jim? Talking about the Hulkster, yeah, brother. Started watching these videos, and one of the videos we stumbled across was the entrances of these mighty, mighty men. My daughters were like, that's really cool. We want to do that. And because I have daughters and they never want to do these things, I said, you bet. Yeah, brother. And so we decided, they got dressed up and whatever, and I have no clue where my wife was at during this time, but they got on, their tights that they had, and then they put on the underwear over the tights, and then they got towels for capes, and they're wearing all kinds of stuff. I said, that's great. Now we need to dim the lights, and we got out flashlights because they needed to be moving. And then I was like, you can't be a wrestler without a name. And I was like, Roxy, you need something that like moves. And like, you're just, and she goes, Roxy, the Regulator. Like, all right. And I looked at Chloe. Chloe, what's your name going to be? So her default is Chloe CB4. Now, I need to explain C for Chloe, B for Bedell, 4 because she just started this whole thing when she was 4. And it's her rap alias. And so if you ever see that track drop, it's CB4, that's her. And so she said, I'm going to be Chloe CB4. I was a little disappointed, but I was like, all right, let's go with it. So they got dressed up, and the first one was Roxy, and so the entrance to our living room was there, and we dimmed the lights, and we got the flashlights out, and all of a sudden, I got over, and my best voice said, ladies and gentlemen, Roxy the Regulator! And she pops in, and we had to find theme music, and so all of a sudden it goes, Regulators! Mount up. And then it starts moving through Nate Dogg and Warren G's Trek, and she's bobbing her head and moving around. I was like, this is good. And Chloe's like, ooh, that's good. But I got it better. So she goes around the corner, Ladies and gentlemen, do the whole thing. I'm not going to do that because I have to speak 5,000 times on a Sunday. And she moves around, and Chloe CB4, and she moves through, and her music pops up. It's the final countdown. And she's like, final countdown for anybody that meets me, brother. I'm like, I had a quick moment with Jesus in that moment. So happy. There's these amazing intros, these experiences of moving through, and you have this God who is parting this river for these people, this grandiose entrance. And why part the river? Well, the first thing is because he can. But it's so much more than simply because God can. You see, the older generation had walked through a moment where God, in his great wisdom and great might and power, had parted a sea so they could walk through to safety. But that generation had passed. And the only way that they could find out these younger generations was by oral tradition. They couldn't get on the Israeli Twitter. They couldn't hop on the Egyptian Googles. They had to, story after story, pass down from generation. And if you've heard something after a while but you've never seen it, after a while you go, I wonder if that happened. You see, the God after the generation before them was still able to do and needed to remind the generation now, I did it back then and I can do it again. He needed to have for them in these altar moments a reminder of his power, his might, his strength, and his beauty. You see, these altar moments remind us that the God who did it before can do it again. Believe that as we follow God, that if we do what generations before us did in honoring him, that God will do what he did for the generations before us. That he's the God that is never changing. And so what he's done before, he can indeed do again. If we do the little things each and every moment like they're big things, that God will show up and do the big things like they're little things, and he will dry up a river. Can you imagine that? Standing there, I mean, not just parting it, he took out another trick out of the back. He just said, stand there and watch this, and all of a sudden the river just, I'd be like, whoa, just dried up that river. I'd be like, yo, did you Instagram that? Like, that is amazing. And they walked across on dry land. A reminder, these pivotal moments that we build these altars and say, God, in every silly intricate little, sometimes minute moment to the big moments, that we're going to honor you and need a reminder about what you've done before and that you can do it again. I love that God, in those moments that we honor him, even in the little things, all the way up to the big things, that not only does he show up, but he shows off. He's like, oh, you want to see something cool? Watch this. They go, oh, our ancestors just walked through it. It just moved. He straight up made the water disappear. We're going to take a moment and thank you, God, for the reminder that you've given us. You see, we see this in the little things. As a church, in 2011, we started this nonprofit called Aid Now. And you can see it here. This is the first iteration. One of the very first events that we did in this was pack a little elementary school across from Lynn Haven Mall, because we had heard from the city that there was a need, that homeless students sitting with your kids in mind, about 400 of them were around in the city. And so we wanted to be able to do something for them. You can see Dan Pollard, our adult ministries pastor, there talking, because that's what he does. Talking. A lot of talking. And set up everything, and they could come through and get, haircuts and book bags and all these things. And we thought that would be kind of a one-off thing. We'd pat ourselves on the back. Woo, praise Jesus, hallelujah. Blessed, hashtag, all of these things. Look at what we did. And God was like, oh, no. You see, in that moment, in that time, while there were 400 kids in the system, only about 300 of them came. But we thought that would be a one-off event, and God was like, oh no, I have bigger plans for you. By the way, I want you to do this every year. And we were like, every year? God, there's a lot of planning and effort and energy, and the board of Aid Now, working with our church, was like, this is a lot of stuff. What do we do? Well, over the last few years, every single year, this event has happened, and it's grown and grown, not because of what we did, because we trusted God in the little things, and he showed up in the big things. And over the course of time leading up to this year's event, over 2,400 kids have come through. And partners like Walgreens and partners like Food Lion and Payless and all of these other people have come alongside this. And you have the superintendent of the school coming out and you have news crews that are going, what is going on here? And what we're saying is we just want to love on kids, but the heartbeat underneath it has always been we want to honor God in the little things and God showing up in the big things. And we want to show these kids that they can be loved by a God that they're not even sure they believe in yet. And so in these moments we've watched and we set audacious goals because God, we're going to celebrate in those moments, but we're not done. God, now we are hearing there's over 800 kids. We want all 800 of them to come. God, how can we help with that? And so as a church, we set audacious goals saying, we're going to collect 200 Old Navy gift cards because we don't want to give them used clothes from your kids and other kids. We want to give them new clothes because you give your kids new clothes. Why can't they walk in with new clothes? And so all this month, we're collecting Old Navy gift cards. Why? Not because we want to pat ourselves on the back, but because we believe in a God that in the little moments can do the same thing he did back then, he can do today. That we can have over 100 people volunteer and sign up to give away their time, sometimes without pay for the day, although many companies go, you're going to serve in the community and we're going to pay you, go ahead and go. Because the God who did those movements back then can do it again today, and he can use you and I to be a part of it. Admiral William McRaven was addressing, famous admiral, was addressing some Navy SEALs upon their graduation of the SEAL program. I mean, these are the manliest of men. They eat nails. They just spit bullets. They're just, when they sweat, it's blood. These are the guys that get woken up at 2 a.m. and they're like, hey, we're going to go for a 10-mile swim in ice cold water. They're like, yes! These are the guys that walk through and go, hey, I'd love for you to fill up this big pack of rocks and I want to run till I can't breathe anymore because that's fun for me. What's wrong with you? We have a lot of these guys even here in Hampton Roads in our community. We have a lot of teams, guys who are part of this church. And as we walk through this and we hear William McRaven talking to these guys, he's addressing, he said, the number one thing you can do for the rest of your life, first thing you can do, the most important thing you can do is make your bed. They're looking around. Does he know that people just disappear from this earth because of us? We're a big deal. We fly in, do our thing, and hop out. Make my bed. He begins to talk about how in the barracks they would make the bed and have it a certain way and do all these things. And as they walk through routine, he says, if you can't do the little things right, you will never be able to accomplish the big things right. So he moves them through these moments. What he's essentially saying to them is stop in the little things, make an altar and do it the right way. Do the things that God has called you to do in the little mundane things because you need to dig in and do the work. I love this up-and-coming actor. You guys may recognize him. I don't know. He's been in a couple of movies here and there. His name's Will Smith. And I know. Who's that? And he saved the world from aliens and stuff like that. Yeah. He's also let us know that you can ride in really weird cabs and make it in Bel Air. And so as he walked through an interview one time, he was talking with the interviewer and explaining to them, his success. He said, listen, there's plenty of people that look better than me, that act better than me, that just have the chops, and I just don't. He said, but if you put any of them on a treadmill and I'm next to him on another treadmill, there's only one of two things that are going to happen. Either they're going to get off first or I'm going to die. He said, because no one is going to out-hustle me. I'm going to work hard and do the work and put it in so I can see every single day incremental movement. And I wonder, if you want to claim Jesus and follow Jesus and dig in, are you willing to die on the treadmill? Are you willing to do what it takes to watch the moments of God's work and God's blessing and be able to celebrate? And it starts with consecrating yourself. And that's just that word consecrate means to set apart for divine purpose. Not set apart for Facebook, not set apart for your job, not even set apart for your family. Now, while your family can be a part of that, while your job can be a part of that, to set yourself apart so that God can do what only He can do, to build an altar, to bookend your day in the beginning and end and go, God, my life is yours. Do with my life as you will, because you are the one that has saved me and made me new. You see, we need to be able to take action. And the first part of that is to make an altar every day. I watch as people show up and engage their faith journey here, exploring God and the divine, and they've been met up with, all right, I've been learned that God has rules and regulations, but then I'm hearing that God sets me up to live freely and lightly, and what does that mean to balance all of these things? Well, first we need to be able to take action, because I watch people walk in and they'll stay here for 2 weeks, 8 weeks, 5 months, a year. They go, I'm not seeing God's movement. And I go, well, one of our core values here is application is everything. That we can give you all the tools, but you need to take action in your faith. Now, I haven't seen God move, and I was like, well, God's right there. He's waiting for you to actually do something. He wants to see that you're involved in this process and not just a robot, to be able to take action. I'm reminded of a story of Truett Cathy. He's the one who started Chick-fil-A, Jesus Chicken. And he, as he was moved there, a car collector, loved it, and he was called by a friend. He said, hey, there's this guy that's in our church. I'd really love for you to mentor him. And so he's like, all right, I'll do that. He had taken time to time. He's like, I have room in my schedule. So the guy comes over, this young man. He says, hey, my leader at the church said you mentor me, whatever that means. And he's like, all right, cool. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a box full of tapes. Those of you guys who are too young to know what cassette tapes are, you do know how to use Google. And so look it up. It's fascinating. And he gives them this box of tapes. Said, this is by this guy named Charles Stanley. He's a pastor in the city. And I just want you to listen to these, and when we get together, we're going to talk about him. He's like, all right, I'll do that, sir. And leaves. Well, each time they meet up, Truett Cathy realizes that he's not listening to the tapes. What this young man had no idea of is that in this string of tapes, the very last tape had been recorded over by Mr. Cathy. And on the tape, well, he was about to find out. He called him in and asked him to bring the tapes after they had been meeting for a while. He said, hey, son, I want you to take out that last tape and put it in that player there. He puts it in and hits play. On the tape it said, hey, this is Mr. Cathy, and I just wanted to let you know you've made it through this. We've been meeting together, and in my office is a key for a brand new car for you. I'm real thankful for you. And he hits stop on it. And he lets the young man know that he's not going to receive the car. I can't imagine sitting in that moment being that young man, going, I had at my fingertips, sitting in my room, the key to not only being poured into, but also to be able to get a brand new car. And Mr. Cathy, being the generous person that he is, says, I care about you, but you need to know that you have to be able to take action in life, to be able to watch and celebrate the reward. It doesn't come to the faint of heart. You have to be able to put in the work. And many people don't get to the celebration because they've never taken action. And that's the other piece of this, is we need to be able to establish celebration after we've taken action, celebration rituals, and learn to celebrate. Learn to be able to take the time that Joshua stopped and he thanked God by making an altar. And I go, why in the world would he do that? Like, just keep trucking along. And if you keep reading the book of Joshua, you see he is on the heels of going to this battle of Jericho. And that in and of itself, if you go read, is super weird. Super weird. The walls of Jericho come tumbling down, not because they had the right army. It's because God told them, just walk around the city a bunch of times. What? But here's the thing. The obedience of Joshua in that Jericho moment, I don't believe ever would have happened if he hadn't stopped to celebrate at Jordan. You can't get to Jericho and the battle, in the win, in the celebration until you and I stop and celebrate what God's doing in this moment. And I think what holds most of us back is that we sit so much in our shortcomings. We have no problem thinking and internalizing how destitute we are in our faith, in our actions, in our words, in our thoughts. When instead of sitting in how bad we think we are, why don't we try celebrating just how God is so amazingly good? You see, even if you think, man, I have nothing to celebrate, I have nothing to be able to put, your debt is paid in full. That everything that you've lived and done and bad and good and ugly, all of that that keeps you from a relationship with God has been paid in full through Jesus. And I get a glimpse of this, and I've had this a couple of times in my life, where we've been out to eat, and then we ask for the bill, and the waitress hands it to us, and the balance says 0, and I'm like, I think you messed that up. I think we're supposed to pay. I don't want you to have to pay. They said, no, someone has paid for your meal. I go, now I'm not saying that for you to ever pay for my meal if you see me around. But what those people didn't know, the couple times that that's happened, is we were in it was a heavy time for us financially. They might be saying, then why are you out to eat? Well, if your parents and your kids are driving you crazy and you're at your wit's end, sometimes you just dig down and you just go, we have nothing left. Let's go out to eat. Because you just can't. Can't even. And sitting there in those moments, the 2 times that it happened were moments where things were tight for us. And the feeling of going, oh my God, oh my gosh. It's the very same moment that Jesus went to the cross and you and I had a debt and he said, I'm going to pay that in full. And what is our response? Our response is to celebrate and give back, to thank God and do that for others, to say, God, I love you. God, I will give back, and have altar moments to celebrate. Did that yesterday. I went for a run and I posted this photo to Instagram and Facebook, enjoying our city and how beautiful it is. Don't care what you say about the Kempsville corridor. It's awesome. And so run around, I sat at the lake and, made sure I posed right. So I had my face, you know how you do, so you don't look fat and all that stuff. You guys know how it goes. It posted the thing, but I've had somebody ask me a while back, why do you post those? And people do this, do you want attention for working out? Do you want, if you don't post it, does it count for a workout and all this stuff? No, I post it and I will continue to because it's a celebration. Because these shouldn't be here. Because back in college when we were driving down Interstate 64, we got in an accident. And the car ended up looking like this. And the car rolled 4 times. We went over the cement median. There were 5 of us in the car. The person in the back seat wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And when the paramedics got there, after we had all gotten ourselves out, and we're picking glass out of our heads, I was in the front seat driving, and my friend was over there. He said, who was in the front seat? Raised our hands. He said, you guys, what happened? You shouldn't have your legs. Because everything that had gone in here had been smushed back, and there was no space for our legs. He said, anybody who's in an accident locks up. Intense. He said, why is it that you guys curled up in the fetal position in that accident? Neither of you should be walking right now. So every time my feet hit the floor, even after a night where my daughters have snuck in bed and kicked me, I have the same moment that Dennis Waitley has when he looks at his bulletin board, an altar moment going, God, thank you for what you did in my life. I'm going to celebrate it, and I'm going to use every opportunity, whether it's through this church, whether it's through 8 Now, moments to give it away. And why do we build altars? Well, altars remind us that the God who did it before, well, he can do it again. Question is, are you willing to follow that God down that road of sacrifice, of worship, of listening, to see on the other side and celebrate what he can do? Choice is yours. What will you do? Would you pray with me?